You know, there are these moments in history, these real inflection points, where everything, our entire civilization, just teetered on the very edge of a cliff. The Cuban Missile Crisis, that was absolutely one of those moments. I mean, for 13 straight days, the entire world just held its breath while two superpowers stared each other down, their fingers literally hovering over the button that could have ended it all.
It's a pretty chilling question to think about, right? We tend to see history as this thing that's way back in the past, but this was a moment that made the apocalypse feel incredibly, immediately real. And the answer? It's probably more recent than you think.
Yeah, for 13 days, right there in October of 1962, the fate of, well, everyone hung in the balance. This wasn't some kind of war game or a hypothetical scenario. This was terrifyingly real, and everything came down to just a handful of critical decisions.
Okay, so to really get a grip on just how close we came, we're actually not going to start at the beginning. Nope, we're jumping right into the deep end to the single most dangerous moment of the whole crisis. October 27th, 1962. A day that would go down in history as Black Saturday.
So, picture this. Deep under the Caribbean Sea, the commanders of a Soviet submarine, the B-59, are totally isolated. They're completely cut off. The U.S. Navy is dropping these little non-lethal depth charges around them, basically just trying to get them to surface. But with all their communications to Moscow gone, what did they think? They assume the absolute worst has happened. World War III has started. So the captain and another officer, they agree. It's time to launch their nuclear torpedo. But the protocol, it required a third vote, and that third commander, a man named Vasily Arkhipov, he said no. In that sweltering, high-pressure tin can, his single no might have literally saved the entire world.
So how on earth did we get there? I mean, how did the entire world get pushed to a single terrifying decision point inside a submarine? Well, that moment didn't just happen in a vacuum. The absolute terror inside that sub, it was a direct reflection of the chaos raging on the surface. It was the culmination of decades of mistrust, ideological warfare, and one provocation after another. To really understand it, we've got to rewind a bit, back to the end of World War II.
Okay, so after World War II ends, you've got these two massive superpowers left standing, and they have completely different ideas about how the world should work. This wasn't your typical war with soldiers and battlefields. No, this was a Cold War, and it was fought with ideas, with money, and always with the threat of nuclear war looming in the background.
And this really boils it all down, you see. At its heart, the conflict was this. America, with its capitalism and democracy, wanted to stop the spread of communism. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, with its communist and authoritarian system, wanted to expand its influence. And for the next 45 years, pretty much every major global event was seen through this lens. The US and the USSR were just locked in this epic struggle, each trying to pull the rest of the world over to their side.
And this whole thing, the nuclear arms race, it wasn't just about who could build the most bombs. It was way more like a high-stakes chess game. You see, in the early 60s, the US placed these Jupiter nuclear missiles in Italy and Turkey, right on the USSR's doorstep. This move basically put the Soviet Union in check. Suddenly, Moscow was within easy striking distance, and that aggressive move? It put immense pressure on the Soviets to make a countermove, to somehow level the playing field.
And that's when this global chessboard found its new, most critical piece. Not somewhere in Europe or Asia, but on a tiny island just off the coast of Florida.
90 miles. That's it. That's the distance between Cuba and the United States. I mean, for 100 years, America basically saw Cuba as its own backyard, a place to go on vacation. But when the politics on that island suddenly flipped, that 90 miles went from being a comfortable distance to a terrifyingly close threat.
And things escalated fast. First, you have the revolution in 1959. Fidel Castro comes in, kicks out a US-backed dictator. Then, he starts seizing American-owned businesses and gets friendly with the USSR. So the US tries to respond with the Bay of Pigs invasion in '61, which fails big time. It's a huge embarrassment for the new Kennedy administration. After that, they launch Operation Mongoose, this covert campaign of sabotage and assassination attempts. But all this did was push Castro even further into the Soviet Union's arms. He was desperate for a powerful friend to protect him.
And for the Soviet premier Nikita Khrushchev, this was a golden opportunity. Putting missiles in Cuba, it solved two problems at once. First, it would protect his new ally, Castro, from another American attack. And second, it was perfect payback for those American missiles in Turkey. It was his way of saying, now you'll know what it feels like. A really bold, really risky gamble to level that strategic playing field. And then, That gamble became terrifyingly real. It all starts on October 16, 1962. A U.S. spy plane is doing a routine flyover of Cuba, and it comes back with photos that just make everyone's blood run cold. There they were, Soviet nuclear missile sites, being built in secret, with a range to hit nearly any major city in the United States.
And this timeline just shows you how incredibly fast everything happened. On day 1, October 16th, Kennedy sees the photos and forms a secret crisis group called XCOM. Just a week later, he's on national television telling the whole world about the missiles and announcing a naval quarantine around Cuba. By day 11, Khrushchev is sending secret letters. And then you get to day 12, Black Saturday. A U.S. spy plane is shot down, and that whole submarine incident happens. The clock was ticking down, and it felt like war was just inevitable. And here's a really crucial detail. See that word quarantine? That wasn't an accident. Under international law, a blockade is considered an act of war. But a quarantine, well, that was more of a legal gray area. Kennedy's team chose that word very, very carefully. It allowed them to apply serious pressure without actually firing the first shot. It was a brilliant, calculated move that basically put the ball in the Soviets' court.
So after the absolute chaos of Black Saturday, a pilot had been shot down, a nuclear torpedo was almost launched, it really seemed like war was the only option left. But the solution didn't come from the military guys, it came from a quiet, secret, back-channel meeting that offered one last way out.
And this right here, this is the secret that saved the world. Publicly, the deal was simple. The USSR pulls its missiles out of Cuba, and the US promises not to invade. It looked like a huge win for Kennedy, like the Soviets just backed down. But secretly, there was another part to the deal. The US also agreed to quietly remove its Jupiter missiles from Turkey and Italy. This part had to be kept top secret to save face politically.
But there was a real aftermath to all this. Publicly, it looked like Khrushchev caved, and that damaged his reputation so much he was removed from power just 2 years later. And of course, tragically, President Kennedy was assassinated only a year later. But the crisis did have a positive, sobering effect. To make sure this never happened again, the famous Moscow-Washington hotline was set up for direct communication. And that secret missile swap deal? Nobody knew about it for over 25 years. It was a close call that actually led to the first real steps toward arms control.
So, what's the big takeaway here? The Cuban Missile Crisis showed us just how fast things can spin out of control, how easily miscalculation can lead to total disaster. But it also showed us that diplomacy, even secret back channels, can pull us back from the brink. And it really leaves you with the critical question for today, doesn't it? In our world of instant communication and super fast escalation, could we avoid a crisis like this again?